All right. Well, hello, Tiffany.
Hello. Happy
So good
whatever
to see
day
your
it is.
face. I know. Happy what day is this now?
I think it's Monday and we're in July is what I've been told.
Well, I only know the date because we had the 4th of July this weekend.
Yeah.
Of course, this will air later. What did you guys do for the 4th? Anything exciting?
You know, felt a lot of feelings about the 4th
Felt a lot of feelings. It was a lot of cognitive dissonance.
So we had a very small social distance gathering with a couple friends who were feeling the same way as we were and had a lot of really raw conversations. And that's how we chose to spend it.
There you go.
Yeah. Lit a few things on fire for the kids. Everyone was happy, but it's a lot.
That's kind of what we did. And we watched Hamilton to remind myself that, you know, there's still art.
I know you love the musical theater.
I do.
I've actually never seen Hamilton, which is so gross to admit.
You can watch it on Disney Plus now.
That's amazing. Is that where the new one is that everybody's like all excited about? Oh, very cool. It's nice. We have that. The Plus. You got to have the Plus.
Yes. Yeah. It's worth it. All right. You have a new book out, which I'm so excited about, Strong Women Rising, which I have to say, you know, as a former therapist, this book hit all my buttons.
Well, that's the highest compliment.
I mean, I was
person could
dang, she's done some work. Tiffany sat on the couch.
I love a therapist. All of the ones I've had, all of the ones who have taught me so much. But I definitely wanted to include some of those.
It's so good.
Coping mechanisms and strategies that I've learned in therapy because obviously I have found a lot of value in it. So
no, I love it. I mean, I've always had this little, noodle of I should try to write a book that's really approachable, that takes all the therapeutic stuff and puts it together. And then it's like, oh, Tiffany did it. Tiffany did it with also, and it's pretty.
Yes.
It's so pretty.
The designer that did all of the Australian illustrations, Jackie Sheridan, she's amazing.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it.
And then Morgan was my editor who we both know and love. Yeah. And so it was just so fun.
So awesome. I actually am going to use this for myself and I'm going to order a second one for my 13-year-old because I'd really like her to go through it.
Oh, I hope she likes it. I've had a couple people say they gave it to teens and I'm like, as long as you don't care that they're swearing and you're good. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. She's swearing. So,
right. I think I figure at junior high and up, you're done. They're hearing it 24/7. So
yeah, their text messages are just whatever, dude.
Yes. And I continue to be the biggest fan of your blog name, Rage Against And I'm so excited that you now have a book under the same name. And my husband, when your package arrived, was like, wait, this is her blog name? How have you never told me about this? Because Rage Against the Machine is my favorite band of all time.
Well, it is mine too.
Yeah. I was planning to go see them this year.
Me too.
But then the Rona and then, next year,
Tiffany,
I guess.
I had tickets in 3 cities. Before it all got canceled.
My gosh.
I was going to see them in Arizona, in Oakland. I don't remember.
That's where I was going to go, Oakland.
Yeah. When the tickets went on sale, I was like, well, let's just go to all of them. When will this ever happen?
I was going to go slum it at Coachella, as an old person and be the embarrassing old person at Coachella just to see them. So then when they said they were going on tour, I was like, I don't have to embarrass myself for the children.
Right. I had all of the same thoughts and I was like, can I really go to Coachella? Because I really feel,
I don't know. I feel like I'm pushing it.
Yeah.
I feel like how I feel about TikTok. Maybe I could just be an observer and not add to the conversation. It would be But
that's how I was feeling. Cause I was like, do I have to buy jean shorts and a floral headdress to go to Coachella?
I think it's required.
Do I have to get a flowy caftan?
I think you're supposed to wear nothing but flowers. This is what I've got.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that.
The world isn't ready for me
Here's how old I am, because I'm older than you. I did see Rage Against the Machine at a festival, and it was called Lollapalooza, and it was in 92.
Oh my God. And I bet it was amazing. I think I had that.
It was amazing.
Honestly.
But I feel like if you were at Lollapalooza, the originals, you're too old for Coachella.
Yeah.
You had your time.
You had your time. What about Warped Tour? Because
that's in the middle.
That's pushing it. Yeah.
That's in the middle. That's how we define our generations. We had Woodstock, we had Lollapalooza,
right.
Your Warped Tour generation, and I guess my children know Coachella. I don't know. All right. So I want to have you read a little segment from your book. And then I'm going to read a segment from mine, and we're going to talk about the overlap. You ready?
Awesome. Yes. So one of the main overarching topics of your book being learning to parent without perfection.
Yes.
Relatable. And I loved from even the first few pages, I could feel that undercurrent of you touching on imposter syndrome without really talking about it. And there's this part where you're talking about getting out of the shower and you're talking to NPR and you're like dripping wet and you have calamine lotion, I think it was, like all over you. And I was just like so relatable, because there are so many times when I've been asked to do things and my brain just tells me, you can't do that because you are not as good as this person that could do it, or that perfectionism that eats away at us. And something I've had to work through, like, say yes, figure out how to figure out later. That's what everybody does. Say yes to the job, and then you figure out what to do when you get the job, right?
Yeah.
So this is from page 17 in my book. And it says, perfectionism is the mean girl side of ego, and she's a fake ass bitch. You might as well name her Regina George or Heather. She's always telling you that in order to be liked, you must be perfect. The thing is, perfection isn't even a thing. What is perfect to one person can be terrible to another. It's as subjective as art. We get so fixated on wanting to be seen as right that we avoid trying new things so we won't feel disappointed or not good enough. The problem is that in order to be great at most things, you have to be bad at them first. Don't let perfectionism hustle you out of your potential.
Oh, I love it. So good. And I want to point out that you did just make 2 musical theater references with Regina George and Heather. I mean, I guess they were both movies first, technically.
Well, I was a musical theater major for like 1 semester at college.
That's right.
So
I forgot about that. We had that in common.
Yes, I love it. I mean, I'm not up to date, but yeah, the classics. The Mean Girls on Broadway, I would kill to see.
Oh, speaking of things that got canceled, we also had tickets for that.
Oh.
And that got canceled. So I gave my kids tickets for Christmas. How sad is this? That was everyone's gift, was big tickets to things. And then
you got refunded, right? I mean,
I got refunded,
but their joy didn't, and their joy also got refunded. Well, I'm sure they were very disappointed.
As you're mentioning the refund, I am feeling a little bit of conviction of like, I did get the money back and then I didn't do anything for the children. Like I was like, I guess I'll put this in the bank account.
That's 2021's problem. Okay.
Exactly. I probably should actually maybe offer them the money, like choose a new Christmas gift since you didn't get to see any of those plays.
Aw.
Womp womp. All right. So I'm going to read also about perfectionism. Let me see here. Okay. It's still a constant temptation to compare my life, and my perfectionism is very much wrapped up in comparison, to the highlight reel of people online. Once I was scrolling through Instagram and saw a photo of a friend on a Hawaiian vacation with her kids. And as I was looking at their photos, I had this pang of jealousy. I was thinking, wow, they really go on a lot of trips. I wish I was able to do that. I want to be a family that travels more. They look like they're having so much fun. Then I realized I was looking at my phone while I was at an Airbnb in Palm Springs while staying with my kids for a week. I was jealous of someone else's vacation while I was on my own vacation. The truth is that contentment is an inside job. So is authenticity. Validation doesn't come from magazines, blogs, Facebook, or even your best friends. It doesn't come from looking like you have it all together. It's easy to spend our time trying to manufacture the visuals of contentment or longing for the images of happiness that permeate social media. It's harder, but more rewarding to dig into our own lives, to do the work of finding gratitude and satisfaction in our private moments. The struggle to be content and happy with your imperfect self is a journey.
Oof. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So let me ask you this, because I wrote my book. My book is for anybody, but it's definitely kind of specifically written for moms, and your book was written for women. Do you think this imperfection thing is unique for women or heightened for women?
I think society and our culture puts a lot of more pressure on women than it does on men in a lot of ways. However, I think men deal with their own set of challenges that I didn't necessarily recognize until I actually started reading some of Brené Brown's work on shame and how men are shamed.
Yes.
And I was able to empathize more with that struggle. But I do think that being seen as perfect for women is very much laid out for us in our society.
Yes.
It's like, if you want to figure out how to be perfect, you can go online and figure it out. And that looks like skinny and white and college educated and has it all together and hot husband with lots of money and all of those things that you see people constantly chasing. And I've been guilty of it in the past.
Oh yeah.
But like you said, it's completely an inside job.
It is.
It's 100%. There's no amount of validation. And I've seen this through other influencers that I know that have millions and millions of followers, and they still haven't found that inner validation, and I'm not judging their journey. I'm on my own journey, but I've heard them say, like, it's even with that much validation, I still have to do the work inside. I still have to do the work myself.
Well, and I think you and I, as bloggers, have had that interesting peek behind the curtain at what I think is being presented to women as perfection, which is a lot of these sort of lifestyle blogs, Instagram accounts where people look really perfect, right? Everything's polished. And as you said, they're, skinny and taking photos on the beach in their bikini and, or their home is perfect or what have you. And it's interesting to be in the industry and know how much behind the scenes some of these people that look really perfect are really hurting or struggling with mood disorders or, which I am too.
Yeah.
All of that.
Right.
But, I just think that there's such an illusion to perfection that it's so important that we don't buy because none of it's real. Like it's all fake.
I talk about this with my kids a lot about social media. Because of the work that I do, my son, for example, he's always like, you're famous. People, and I get really grossed out by that. And I'm like, first of all, that's not true. Like, it's just not. And second of all, it doesn't matter. Like what matters is that I'm actually a good mom and a good person. Totally. Like how many likes I get don't matter. How many followers I have don't matter. It does help me pay the bills and it does help support my work, but that doesn't make me a good person. And it's something that I want them to understand because I think perfectionism and social media, there is a lot of issues that can come from chasing that perfectionism and also chasing that, like you said, the highlight reel of other people. In your book, you talk about somebody who was staging their family photos for their blog in a
model home.
In a model home.
That's real. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, first of all, really smart. Could have avoided a lot of cleaning that way.
Totally.
Second of all,
she would just go on a Saturday and take her kids and stage a bunch of photos in a perfectly clean house.
I mean, it's kind of genius, to be honest.
It's genius.
But it's not real. It's not real.
Right.
But then how many people sending that message out and they're saying, oh, but look at Susie, she can do it, So that means that and that's where the comparison comes in and all that. And so I think I've been pretty I don't feel like I've really chased that sort of perfection, trying to put that perfection out there. But I do think I have been guilty of wanting validation from outside people in the past about my feelings a lot. Like, see me, see my struggles, see my emotions, see my feelings. And really, that's something I can only give myself.
Yes.
So I've tried to stop chasing it, still sharing my journey and still sharing what I feel like could help somebody else perhaps, or could start a conversation. But until I was able to really turn off the haters and the trolls and the caring and the comments from other people and focus on what I like and what I care about and what I think is good, things got a lot easier.
Well, you mentioned there were a couple things in your book that really were like, ooh. But you mentioned basically being your own, like being your own boyfriend, being your own, like being your own validation, which is so important. And I think something that we're not really taught enough, that our validation really has to come from ourselves, that if we need another person to validate us, we're in a constant state of need, right? Because, and then in psychology, we call this an external locus of control, which means I don't actually have any control of myself. If I can't validate myself, I rely on everyone else. And that's a dangerous, dangerous proposition.
Right. And it's also like, if you water down your art, for example, if you watered down your book to make it more like Rachel Hollis or whoever else is like out, that wouldn't be your book.
Right.
It would just be something similar to what her book is, but that's not why people are buying your book. They're buying your book because they want you. And that was something I had to learn is people are coming to my blog or my podcast because they want that version of me or what I'm creating. That's what they want. And that's what brought them there. So why are you worried about trying to convince them to stay when they already like you and they already are relating to you, or they wouldn't be here at all?
It's so true. And I have found, and I feel like this is true of your platform as well. I have found that when I am my most vulnerable and imperfect, people appreciate that the most.
Yeah.
Like that's really the content that people are like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like I remember one time I did a home tour. And I think it was one of those days where I was just like fed up. I'm like, I'm so tired of people posting these fake photos of their clean house. And so I was like, I've got your home tour right here. And I just took pictures. I went around and like took a picture of like a pile in the corner or like the chair that had all the laundry on it. Like I just posted like, what does my house really look like? Like, here's a bunch of papers that I need to go through that I just put the mail right here and I never go through it. And like, that was one of my most viral posts. So I think people do appreciate imperfection. Like it's relatable and it's relieving, right?
Mm-hmm. Because you're setting your ego aside and that's part of it. And that's makes other people feel like they can be vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to come across like you have things more together than somebody else. You're humanizing yourself and people relate to that. And I think it's important, especially online and especially to set a good example for our kids.
Oh my gosh, totally. Okay. You said something in your book about perfectionism and procrastination. And this was this was a Tiffany, you could have just called me moment, and you have a little segment that's called Procrastination is Perfectionism in Sheep's Clothing. Talk about that.
I still struggle with this constantly. And it's like I picture a blank canvas and what I imagine an artist feels like before they're about to start. And you don't want to start because what if you make a mistake? That's how I often feel when I am avoiding whatever it is that I need to be doing, whether that's writing or editing or also avoiding things that are hard, conversations that are hard,
totally.
Things that I am feeling like, do I have the emotional stamina to put my ego aside today and be bad at this?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really hard. Some days I really don't want to be bad at something.
Totally.
And so, I think that a lot of times we avoid things because in our minds, we've created a situation that's harder than it actually is. Or conversations will be harder than we think they're going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Or we assume the response of other people because we assume that we know how they're going to respond or what we think their reaction is going to be, which is unfair as well. And I have to force myself. Actually, my husband last weekend was just like, you're avoiding your work. I'm just going to say it to you once. If you want to go to IKEA, we can, but I'm just going to let you know.
Totally.
Because I need that. Like I need somebody who can help me be accountable.
Totally.
Like, you said you were going to get that done today. So you weren't going to be stressed out all week. And I know you want to like lay here and do nothing, but just reminding you like gently so that you are being, aware of that. And I need that sometimes.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when I get in this circle, and I totally struggle with this too, I call it creating insurmountable tasks. And they're not insurmountable tasks, but I put them in that category in my mind. And sometimes they're responding to an email that's a little bit confrontational, or, it's just like a thing that feels overwhelming that I just need to do that would
like, what are your rates?
Yes. Oh,
I'm like, how many days can I avoid that?
Totally. Yeah. Like, or an email that requires me to like pull together a bunch of information or something. And it's like, these are usually things that would take 10 minutes to do, and they'll be on my mind, and I just won't I won't do them. And then it's like stressful. And if I would have just done it, I would feel a lot more peace.
100%. When we all do it. And the thing is like, it's always worse than we think it's going to be.
Always.
And my brother-in-law once said to me, like, I try not to put off anything that takes less than 5 minutes.
Yes.
And I was like, so now I always think about that when I like walk past that thing on the ground that I don't want to bend over and pick up because I'm like on my way to the bathroom or something. I like guilt myself. I'm like, just do it, Tiffany. Stop thinking about it. But it's the same with work. It's like, I could just answer that email and then I would feel a lot better. And I wouldn't be taking up the brain space that I am to continually shame myself about the fact that I haven't done it.
Yes. Yes. I wouldn't at the end of the day have to take it off a to-do list and write it on another one.
Exactly.
And then berate myself.
Exactly. Like, could have done that today, but you didn't, did you?
Oh, here's this action item again. Not done.
100%. Yes.
And then you mentioned that tendency too, to then predict and fortune tell how other people are going to respond. And I really struggle with that too. And just that catastrophizing of like, oh, this is going to end badly. They're going to think poorly of me. That can really freeze me in my tracks, like hardcore.
Yeah. I like to say I'm a recovering people pleaser, but it's something I have to actively work at because
people pleasing. Yeah. That's an active journey. That's not a like, I'm done now.
Right. I'm done. Prioritizing everyone above myself. No,
that's an everyday wake up and try.
Yes, but it really is like a hustle, and I think again ties into that perfectionism. And the truth of the matter is, like, some of the best relationships we have in our lives are the ones where we've had to have the hardest conversations.
It's so true.
Uncomfortable conversations, even the ones we have with ourselves.
Yeah,
and even with talking about difficult issues like getting into racism and things like that, it's easy to avoid reading that and to not look in the mirror. It's easy for us to avoid researching emotional abuse or any other like of these hard, difficult topics that we want to avoid because we know it'll make us uncomfortable. And so something that I've also learned through therapy is get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because my people pleasing side really comes out, either whether I'm trying to please myself or others around me. Like, let's make this okay. Let's make this not a thing. And let's make everybody happy and no conflict and all this stuff. That's just like life. Like,
it's not.
Life is full of hard conversations and unlearning and relearning and doing better and putting our ego aside. And it's hard work, but I feel like the payoff is so much. The reward and the relationships that we get out of it with ourselves and other people are well worth the quote hard work.
I completely agree. But I will tell you, I think as a woman, and then also as someone raised Christian, that idea of being comfortable with hard conversations or even, gentle confrontation. And I don't mean like we're walking around like, oh, mad all the time, but, just like stating facts that are unflattering or things like that. Like, I feel like we've been so socialized against that. Like, we've been socialized to be winsome and to be, breezy and,
small and quiet.
Yeah.
And polite.
And if we're not, we have all kinds of gendered words. We're bitchy, we're naggy, those are words
bossy.
that we assign to women. Yeah. For asserting ourselves or for speaking up. So, for me, it's been a challenge too of, like you're saying, my desire for everyone to be happy, but then also my desire to never, I never want to seem like I'm bossy, which who cares? Who cares?
Right. Who cares? And why is that bad?
Right.
And there's so much, I feel like just kind of programmed into us. I like to refer to it as like our hard drive, like our inner hard drive. There's just so much like deleting of stuff we have to continue to go through. And unfortunately, I learned a lot about gender roles in the church that were incorrect when I was a part of it. And I think the church is changing and religion is changing. And there are a lot more people in the sector now than when I was in it that are speaking up against those things. My eye keeps watering because I have makeup on for the first time in like months, of course. And now it's like, what's happening? Poison.
Reject.
What is this? We've just been moisturizing. But I think that, getting really comfortable. That's like I say, like, be a bitch, be bossy, be nasty, whatever it is you want to be. And I try to instill that in my daughter and my sons, like women be whatever they want to be, period.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful for our kids that it's going to be better. I think every generation wants that for their kids. But I really see it already in my niece who's your kid's age and my kids, they have a lot more emotional awareness and emotional intelligence and have been raised with a lot more tools.
I think so too.
To regulate those things. So I am hopeful. For sure.
Yeah, I am too. My kids, I think, they have words for things that I definitely didn't have at their age.
100%. I love when like a Gen Z comes into my DMs and tells me a term I don't know.
Right.
Or educates me. I'm like, yes, more of this, because I love that.
It's so funny. My daughter, who's 13, has a text thread with a bunch of friends, and the name of the thread is Toxic Masculinity.
Your kids have always been amazing. I remember sitting at the Iris Awards, and I think it's your youngest daughter was like, I have a swear jar on the table, and anybody who's swearing, I'm just going to let you know this is where the money goes. And I was just like, she was not intimidated by sitting at a table of adults. And I was the same way when I was that age. I was just like, I preferred the presence of adults. And now I prefer the presence of children. So I don't know what that is about, but
she is a little adult. She came on that trip to intern. Like, she was there in her blazer signing people up.
She was just like another adult in the room, honestly. Like, her personality, she was like, she just belonged there.
She kind of scares me, but she's got all her philosophies. She's a little feminist, Black Lives Matter, in her like LGBTQ ally group at school,
I love it.
Like, these are not things that were on my mind at that age. At that age, I think I was like, boys,
Yeah. I mean, I'm still an idiot. I mean, honestly, so I'm still figuring that out.
I mean, she's like, we're at the point now where, she's calling me out for things.
And I love that. It's like full circle. Like my daughter is like scary, the same as me. And people comment on the time, like, we look alike, we talk alike. It's just like copy paste. She is her own person. She is a lot like my husband, but I can't remember what it was, but she was like, didn't you just tell us yesterday, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? You're right. And that's my opportunity as a parent to apologize to our kids, which I think is so important. I
totally agree.
I have, peers who are like, my parents still to this day have never apologized to me for a single thing. Like, they don't believe that they can actually do anything wrong to their children because they're the parent.
Yeah.
Even as adults. And I'm just like, I feel like our kids learn humility through us.
I totally agree.
It's a role-playing situation we have to continually show them. So although it's difficult when I get called out by my kids, it's also a really good opportunity for me to practice what I preach.
Dude, completely. I so agree. And I think it is a really like corrective emotional experience when we've hurt our kids, because we will.
100%.
We will hurt our kids.
Yeah.
For us to then say, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that I did that. Like, that's so healing, for us to just acknowledge where we've messed up. And as you said, it's also modeling. It's modeling that humility. It's modeling that you can say sorry, that, we're not all walking around with these fragile egos that can't acknowledge if we've messed up.
Yes. And I loved you touched on that in your book. You were talking about like, yes, I don't want my kids to quote, care what people think, but I also want them to care about the impact they have on other people.
Yes.
And that is so true. And it's something that has to be taught a lot of the time. Like sometimes some people are naturally empathetic. with having my oldest son on the spectrum, something we focused on a lot when we were doing ABA was working on empathy of others and just continually talking about our impact. And he's the most empathetic person I know. And,
I love it.
And it taught me a lot too, just about highlighting and how important it is sometimes to just pause and say, but how is the other person feeling on the other end of this? Like, I am crystal clear on my perspective, but how could this possibly be coming across to the other side? And I think there's a lot of adults and that still need to learn that. And
it's so true.
Like, my daughter corrected somebody the other day on something, and then she said, you know, but I understand because I've made that mistake myself. And I was just like, yes, I loved it. Because
I love that.
She was making her needs known and being assertive, but also acknowledging, like, I get it because I'm human too.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I hope that we can all, you know, with our next generation, in addition to giving them that like self-esteem, like you're amazing, but also like, you're not that amazing.
Right. Get a job, work.
But also like, you're going to make mistakes and like, you know, and you're not so amazing that you can't consider how you come off to other people.
Right.
You know,
I only said get a job, work, because I'm just like, I think that I still struggle with, sorry, my kid's screaming. I still struggle with being seen as instilling that productivity into my kids. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing like, that's actually not that important. Well, it's actually more important that they're good people, but you know, responsibility is taught and accountability is taught. I never want my kids to be like the spoiled kids either. And I don't know what that is inside of me, but I want them to appreciate everything they have. And that's like just another core value that's so important to me. Because I think sometimes we soften the blow too much for our kids.
I agree. And listen, we need them to go out and work because we need them for them to go live their lives.
Right.
So we can have ours back.
Right. Like there's a fine line sometimes I have to find between making them feel, like you said, loved and amazing. And you know what? We can improve on this area and we're going to dig in. And just like anybody else, we all have things we're working on. And that is a form of love.
I agree. And I have seen far too many kids whose parents don't feel that they can ever correct or, you know, mirror back to their kids or give honest feedback. And then those kids think that they are the shit. And then they grow up into narcissists, you know?
100%.
Like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm amazing. My mom told me every day.
Right. Or I've never heard the word no. Or I've never had to, you know,
or no one's ever said to me,
or,
no one's ever said to me, you're being an asshole. Right.
Right.
I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, if like more than 3 people think you're being an asshole, like 3 people that you know, not on the internet, right? But like 3 people in your inner circle think you're being an asshole, you are being an asshole. You have to listen. Right. Like,
right. We're all
I tell
human.
my kids that all the time. And I also tell them, if all of your friends don't like your boyfriend, there's something wrong with your boyfriend.
Amen.
Tell them that all the time.
Like, I'm just like, don't even waste your time, girl. Just stay single.
Everyone else sees red flags.
Oh my gosh, for real.
Run. Okay, before we end, I want you to talk about your podcast because your podcast is amazing.
Oh,
and it's very different from your book.
Yes. So my podcast is called Something Was Wrong. And it's a docu-series style podcast that focuses on emotional abuse. It often touches on relationships with narcissists or others with personality disorders. We talk a lot about trauma and overcoming emotional abuse and also educating others on the signs to look for, those red flags. And educating our youth in recognizing those red flags is really, really important to me. And a huge motivator for me when I started the podcast was reaching like kids your age and my kids when they're teens, when they're first starting out dating, so that they can recognize what is healthy and what isn't healthy. Because a lot of times you've never been in a relationship until you have one. And a lot of people experience the most abuse when they are, unfortunately, in their first serious relationship. So it's a critical time for them to understand, what's okay and what's not okay.
Absolutely. I love it. And you present it in such a, I mean, it's entertaining the way that you present it. It's like psychoeducation, but it's like surprise. It's also storytelling, like you've done it in such an interesting, engaging way that,
thank you.
I mean, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, I should have my daughter listen to it, because I listened to it, but I didn't think that through for her. But it would it's interesting enough that it would capture a young person's attention, but then teach them these things to look for, which is so important.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's been really, the most rewarding part for me has been hearing from those who have said, I listened and I realized I was in an abusive relationship and I've left.
I bet you get a lot of that.
Yeah. And it's just incredible.
That's really rewarding.
It is really rewarding. And it's one of those things that makes me grateful for the struggle I've had in the path that's led me where I am, because I couldn't have the same empathy that I have or the same passion and motivation in this arena if I didn't have my own experience.
No.
And so I think it's like finding gratitude in the really gross, gritty stuff too.
Totally. And I appreciate that about all your work. I feel like your own personal process and the hard work that you've done and the hard shit you've been through is, you've taken all of it, and you've really, I feel like you've taken all of that and turned it into like helping others.
Oh. Well,
both in your book and in your podcast.
I think it heals us. And I think,
it does, yeah.
I'm sure you understand this, especially as a therapist, is that validation that you get in like support groups was huge for me. I attended Al-Anon when I was a younger person before I had kids. And that was so eye-opening and validating for me. Yeah. And so I want the podcast to kind of provide that sort of virtually for people, where they can listen to other people's stories and be like, I was not crazy, even though my abuser told me I was crazy every single day, and this is valid. And
totally.
So I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
So good. All right. Where can people find you online?
So people can follow me on Instagram at Lookieboo, LOOKIEBOO. And there's links there to everything else. So I'll just give that and keep it simple.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah.